Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Matthew Marsden Show. This is something that I'm going to be doing every Monday, not necessarily with this individual, but I'm going to be dropping a video every Monday now, Marsden Mondays, so you can get some consistency and I can be a little bit more regulated in my life, right? So I know that I've got to do something at this particular time. Now, Marsden Mondays is going to launch with a very, very special individual. Now, I'm going to embarrass Tom now, but it's very rare, or I think it's very rare that you get to use the word legend, or it should be rare that you get to use the word legend. And Tom Struthers is absolutely and most definitely a legend in the film industry. I'm just going to give you a little bit of his resume. Tom has been a stuntman and a stunt coordinator and a second unit director on a bunch of films, mainly the ones that you guys, well, you'll know all of them, but the ones I'm going to tell you about. He was a stunt coordinator on Inception. He was a stunt coordinator on The Dark Knight. He was stunt coordinator on X-Men First Class, Shadow Recruit, Dunkirk. I could go on and on and on. One of the last movies he did was Dune, which is one of the greatest movies I think that I've seen in the past 20 years. So with no further ado, I want to welcome my friend to the Matthew Marsden Show, Tom Struthers. Thank you, my friend, for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. Well, thank you for that introduction. I don't know if it's all that warranted, but yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's warranted.
Oh, no, I don't know. I think we're here because of a lot of good people help and believe in us during our careers. And I think that's where it starts and it gets to, gives us the opportunities that we do and what we love to do.
Well, like a true master at his craft, you're very humble. And, it's funny, as an actor, when you start out as an actor, certainly for me in the UK, and, initially the kind of level of stunts that you get to first is like, I'm going to be doing stage fighting, right? Like, this is the way you throw a punch.
Yeah.
And you learn very quickly that if you're a millimeter off or whatever, on stage anyway, you can clock someone and it can be a very, very bad day. So then when you move further up the flagpole, as it were, and you get into these giant movies, stunts become very, 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 very important. And having a competent stunt coordinator is everything, because I mean, I remember thinking, well, nothing can really go wrong. And it can go wrong, but you have to have the best people that have an attention to detail. And you've been on some of the biggest movies of all time, right?
Yeah. Touch wood. Look, I've been really lucky, Matthew. I had a great start. I was just a bush kid in Australia that was actually in Kenya, in East Africa, at the time, working with horses, etc., and farming. And I met one of the true great stunt coordinators, second unit directors of our day, Simon Crane. And him and his Spanish assistant coordinator guy called Jordi Casares, they took a like to me for some reason. I was just mid-20s kid, I was a little bit out there, running around Africa doing my thing, and I'd been born and bred in the Australian outback, and I had the opportunities that a lot of kids of my era did not have. I got to travel, and next thing I know, I got offered a job, and they're like, would you like to come work for us again? After seeing what I did with horses, and I was already a pilot, and I parachuted. So I had a little bit of the action background and some training and weapons, etc. And then next thing I know, I'm on Braveheart, and that was
Wow.
my first big film. I was this young kid, and I was more testosterone and than one necessarily should have, I suppose, running around, swinging a sword, riding a horse, and drinking and partying and doing what you do when you're young and out of control. But going back to that, I had an unbelievable start, and I met some great people, and I worked on some great projects for 10 years for Simon. I became part of his team, and I did my apprenticeship, and I was this little kid, Australian, African, and here I was, and on some of the biggest film sets of the day. And at the time, I think I didn't consider it or take it into that these were the films of the 1990s and 2000s, and they're iconic, like Braveheart and Private Ryan and Titanic and films like that. And I was there for the full run of these films as this young kid and learning the trade. And I've always got that to thank for. And then, Simon Crane put me forward to join the English Stunt Register, which I considered to be one of the most disciplined at the time, one of the most disciplined stunt fraternity anywhere in the world, with their training and the qualifications you needed to attain so you could be part of our industry. So that was a fantastic start to my career. And I think that it was, we don't see enough of it now, to be honest with you. We don't see enough of people where I get to my age and level in the industry now, and I do try to always give someone an opportunity, I think. But I was given the most unbelievable opportunities between, Simon Crane to start with, and then another gentleman who has gone on to be a great second unit director, Paul Jennings, on the first Dark and second of the Dark Knight series, and before I did Inception, and then he went off and did something else, and he gave me blessing. But yeah, I've been very fortunate, and to go to your thing about the safety and about how things grow. I think when we get to our position, we're more about risk assessment and safety officers in our own right, to give the best performance that we can give or can get achieved with either the cast or the performers, so that our legacy, if you will, or our trade is still accepted and furthered in the business. We've been making live action films for over 100 years now, and I think the great films stand out, that people, they don't they don't approach it in a simplistic way, but what they do is what they put in that frame, whatever director or DOP wants to see, is good. And it goes back to the one thing, concentrating on the small things, like you just said a minute ago. It's taking consideration and always trying to achieve the best or better than what the last person achieved. And that's part of, I suppose, the development of our industry. Like on the camera side, look what's happened in our careers, going from 35 mil to the start of digital age with Alexa, and now we're into 8K, shooting 8K digital.
Yeah, I remember when I think it was George Lucas was shooting, one of the first people to shoot digital, and everyone was like, "What is he doing?" This is crazy. And it's really difficult to even comprehend now that you could be shooting on film, because digital gives you so much flexibility. But I do feel with the advent of digital, people have kind of taken it a little bit too far as in the stunt industry anyway, because they're CGIing a lot of stuff. And I miss a lot of the practical special effects and the practical stunts. There's nothing like going and doing stunts and seeing those things, seeing people on wires being yanked across hundreds of feet, someone jumping off. I mean, I just watched the latest Mission Impossible, and I knew that one particular stunt was coming up, right? I knew that Tom had done that stunt, riding the bike off and parachuting. I knew. And I was so excited to see it, because I mean, look, I wouldn't do that. I've done a lot of things. I've jumped out of planes, Tom. I've hung off the side of little birds and whatever. I would not do that. Like, that is something else. But it's, it still grabs you, right? It's still awesome.
I think the rawness of it, Matthew. I think the rawness of it, and I think that we've gone through a period in our film careers in the last 10 years where your big companies like Marvel and all your big visual effects films, they've been accepted and now, but I think people are going back to wanting to see more grounded. There's always a market for everything, I think, but I think that the technology of our smartphone. I mean, there's nothing that I can think of our smartphone can't answer right now. You got YouTube, you got every platform you would like to have on it, but also that means that everything that we do is now exposed all over the world. India, China, Southeast Asia, America, wherever. You can log on and you can look up yourself or myself, or look up anything or see any movie or program or Battlezone or whatever. So I think people have gone back a little bit to saying, well, hang on a minute, we love our escapism and that's great, but can we see some more rawness? Can we see some more reality? And I think that's one
And
of the
I
things.
think that's reflected in storylines as well. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before we came on, like,
Yeah.
doing great stories and
Yeah.
understanding that. I mean, you know this because, progressing on to be second unit. And I mean, and I want to ask you about that. I want you to explain that to people in a minute. But let me just step back a bit to what you said about apprenticeships, because I think that is like super, super important, and the knock on that has. So, whenever anyone says to me, I want to go and do a film degree, I tell them, don't do a film degree. Go and be a runner on a set. Like, go and get the experience, because the truth of the matter is if you go to NYU film school, right, you're gonna rack up a ton of debt, or even USC. I mean, USC, you get a great education, right? There's no two ways about it. You get a great education. But when you go on set, you start off at the bottom again. The
Yeah.
amount of people that I know that have got 200 grand's worth of debt and they're runners on movies, I'd rather say, listen, take that money, go on to set, right? Instead, like, go and take jobs that you can take minimum wage on, or whatever, or even under minimum wage if you can do it. Like, certainly in Europe and where you're over in Morocco, you can go and get on these sets. And if someone, the funny thing about the industry, and I don't want to talk that much about the wokeness in it, but the funny thing about the industry is actually for years and years and years, it was merit based, right? It was merit based.
Yeah.
If you were there and you delivered, even if you're a runner, you turned up, you're on time, you do your job, you're going to get promoted. You're going to go up the totem pole for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you did, right? Like, you started
Yeah.
off, they saw your talent and they're like, hey, kid, come on, you're coming with us.
Yes, exactly that. I mean, I was so lucky about it. I think today, look, the world has changed a lot. The industry has changed a lot. We touched on it a little bit before, but I think that the industry really just needs to leave. We are creative. Let the creative people back in the door. That's what I'm saying. And give the people who want to dedicate their life to this, because I knew a very, very long time ago, Matthew, I'm never going to be a president or a prime minister or someone that you can look up in 50 years, 100, 200 years time and say, oh, that person had an impact on society. But if I stay true and really try to make good creative choices in projects I do, then, and those projects are recognized, even in 100, 200 years time, everything's digitized now. Everything could be, I don't know what the next level of will be, but you can look up and they go, oh, shit, that person did 5 of these projects. Sorry, that person
Yeah.
did 5 of these projects, and and this is what they were fantastic or they were bad, whatever they choose. But that's our legacy. That's what I decided early in my career and my life. My legacy will be to try to do, and look, touch wood, I've been so lucky, to work for directors, like Nolan and Martin Campbell and Denis Villeneuve. They are creative people who want to do original content, and so much today I see that, a lot of people are doing a lot of remakes, which, some are valid in my opinion, some are not, but everyone has an opinion, which is what a part of what we do is. But I just think that having more creative input from all the people means that you start in the business and you start moving through, whether you become an AD or an actor or a producer or a director, you all start somewhere. Like, for example, I can name a few people like Simon Crane, who was one of my mentors. He's had a fantastic career. Like Kevin Delanoy, unbelievable producer, line producer, executive producer. He started his career, I remember him on Braveheart as a location manager.
Yeah.
Then he's produced things like Ali and Blood Diamond and Batman's and all these films, and because they know they're creatively brought through. So I agree with you on that. I think that the world has changed. I think having an apprenticeship and making people aware that we need to bring the people in would be a big move forward. But in this day and age, it seems to be like, oh, you don't have a piece of paper that says that
Yeah.
you're a genius, and so therefore, we don't have a job for you. I think sometimes there's a balance. I think, going to higher education definitely helps people in life, but also think that the people who choose to go straight into our business, whether it might be on props, on special effects, or stunts like my side, or acting, and you know, you can go a different route. You know, you can come through the ranks, and I think that it makes for
Yeah.
better filmmakers who come through the ranks. Even people like Spielberg and Simon Crane, and you know, using the big names, they all served an apprenticeship. They all went through on levels of in the business.
Well, I think it also makes for a level of humility, right? That you
Yeah,
know that at the end of the day, you know that number one, if you don't look, we all know if you don't have talent, you really don't progress, or that's the way it used to be, right? You had
but
to have talent to progress, but also
but
you
any
had to have. Sorry, go on.
sorry, but in any workforce in the world, in a normal workforce, if you're very good at what you do, and and you progress, and you cross the T's and dot the I's, and you do a good job, and you show initiative, and you show that you have vision, it can be in any walk of life. You will move up because that's the ambition. We most humans and most people have an ambition to reach somewhere in life or do something in life, and given the opportunities, and touch wood, some people, some of us get more opportunities than others. That's just a fact of life. I think that I was given more opportunities than some other people I know, and who are just as talented but never reached the same level as I have at the moment. Hopefully, they'll do well, but it's creating opportunities too. It's having a drive.
Yeah, but that is part and parcel of it. I mean, you have to take the opportunities when they come, and I think that what you've detailed as well, because when we started off this interview, you're like, I'm so grateful for all these other people, and that's an admirable quality, right? Because you look and you do know, look, if that person hadn't have seen me that one day, and they hadn't have said, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a shot, right? Because at the end of the day, it is an act of generosity, right? Now, it doesn't
Yes.
mean it's an act of charity, right? It's not an
No.
act of charity. It's an act of
No.
generosity to give someone, to pay it forward, as it were,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And that's what you're looking to do as well, right? I mean, I know that
Always.
you've given a bunch of people opportunities. I know that.
Yeah.
And then it's up to them whether or not they grasp it. But conversely, like we said before, you're a very black and white person when it comes to these things, and you're like, okay, this is either good or it's not good. This is this or this is that. So I personally love that because I know where I stand, right? And I don't think that it is. I know a lot of people get their feels, offended by it, but to me, I love that, and certainly with when you're working with second unit, when you're working with directors, you want someone to come in because, you are, I don't say like more than stunts because that's like, I don't mean that to be derogatory to stunts, but
No.
you know what I mean? You're a second unit director as well, which means you are, uh, um, you have a separate set of skills. And not everyone has that. Not every stunt person has that. It's like,
No.
Chad and those guys moved on and they went and they directed and they've had massive successes like Chad has
and
with
they've
John Wick.
done and they've done fantastic for the business. Chad and Dave Leach, and people of their caliber. They've done amazing, and hats off to them for that. And they've created massive content and people love. And you're absolutely right. I think, look, I remember the day I literally I joined I joined a thing that Simon Crane was doing called Young Indiana Jones in Kenya, because they needed some more horses. And a good friend of mine, I had a lot of ponies at that time. He called me up and said, "Can we use some of your horses?" And we need some young guys to be English soldiers, riding a horse. And I'm like, okay. I remember the day specifically. As I'd finished, we'd been riding all day and doing pieces on horses and that, and some of my horses were a bit ropey and that. So, and the horse master, a man called Geordie Cassara, says, "Can you come over here?" And we sat on a table. It was in the Athi River, up on the tablelands outside of Nairobi in Kenya. And he said, "Would you like to come and work for us today?" It was at that moment when I said to him, "Well, yeah, if you're paying US dollars in an air ticket, I'll come work for you." And it was a very small amount of US dollars in those days, because I was just, even though I was Australian, I was that kid from Africa. So I was on a very much a different level of pay scale than
Yeah.
most people for
Yeah.
about 5 years with Simon. But I remember vividly to this day sitting at this picnic table, looking out as far as you could see across the plains of Africa. getting asked a question, would you like to come and work for us? It was that day my life changed, you know. So yeah, it sometimes, I mean, I do miss ranching and farming, but I got to say it has been a different life, if I could say that.
Well, I think
to
that,
what I envisioned.
yeah, when you get to the, and certainly at the level that you've been at, I mean, you've been with the greatest creatives of all time, right? I mean, I think Denis and Chris, they're just incredible. I mean, I could go on and on about how great those guys are. But when you are in that creative process, there is nothing like it in the world, right? It's really difficult to relay it to someone where you're sitting down there, and maybe you can relay a story about this. I mean, you spoke about looking over. I remember two things that happened to me. Number one, I remember when I got Black Hawk Down, and I remember I had a bottle of champagne in my fridge, and I took it around to my mom because I got the call at like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm doing a Hollywood movie. And I remember knocking on my mom's door, and she came down, she was all panicked, and I went, I did it, I got it, I'm doing a Hollywood film. And then, that moment when you walk on set, and I mean, for you, it's different because you're in the planning process as well, right? Like you go from the beginning, but you walk on set, and you've been talking about building this set, right? Or, conceptualizing, this is what it's going to look like. And you walk on set, and these amazing artists have built this world. And you walk on, you're like, this is just unbelievable. And then when everything comes together, right, when the actors come on, and sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. I'm sure you've been around that a lot, right? But when that clicks and everything starts rolling, and you have the people that are at the top of their game, or even when I've done stunts before and it goes well, it is like this elation that you've done something that is just unbelievable. And like you say, it's forever.
It's our legacy.
It's our legacy. It's there forever. I mean, listen, some of the movies I've done, maybe I wished I hadn't, but no, I mean, the truth of the matter is I've grown on every single thing I've done. But can you tell me some of your experiences on these films that you can share? I mean, I know a lot of times we want to be respectful of the people that we've worked with, but certainly like those moments where things have clicked, or you've gone, wow, this is something else, or this is, I know I'm in the presence of greatness, doing great things.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, like, touch wood, I've been very, very lucky to have experienced some memorable, great films. Honestly, the first couple of films, like the Private Ryan and Titanic and Braveheart, there was just so many iconic moments in those. When I look back on it now, and I think, Jesus, that was just incredible. I mean, I'm always remember the day that Matt Damon broke down crying on the bridge, like after the two P-51s went overhead, one being flown by the great and late Ray Hanna, and that was just an iconic moment. We were there on set, and Steven Spielberg's filming this scene with him breaking down on the bridge and crying, and it showed us. I think that moment showed more about the battle inside of what you go through in a war situation than any other piece of the film did. That was just iconic for me. And then one of the other iconic, always remember, we were in Chicago, and I was working for Paul Jennings, supervising first unit for him, with Chris Nolan on the first Batman. And I was looking up one evening, and I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if he was up on top looking down into Gotham City, looking down on us now, Batman? And I said to Chris, and Chris was like, "Nah, I don't need that." And then next day he was like, "Go find me a building that you think would be nice for him to be on." So I did. I went up on pretty much every iconic building in Chicago. The Chicago Tribune and the Wrigley Building and everywhere. And we found this one place on the main channel that had this great architecture, and it had these huge, like, stone balls. And so we put him up in there, and then they shot from a helicopter, and they did a heli shot of him looking down in the city, so to speak. So I did that one, and then the next.
By the way, everybody knows that shot. I know that shot right now. I can see it in my head. It's so iconic.
And then we get to the next one, and Chris was like, no, you don't want to do it again. I said, we have to. It's your trailer shot, Chris. And this is when we flipped the truck and all these kind of things up in LaSalle, in the main street of Chicago. And so I put him up on Sears Tower this time, and it wasn't a stunt performer this time. It was Christian Bale. We put a little like safety on him, and he stood on the corner,
Wow.
of Sears Tower, and a helicopter come up and revealed him looking down, and hearing all the chatter and the voices and his thing. And then the funniest was on the last one, I became the overall stunt coordinator and second, doing all Chris's work, and then I said to Chris, "Look, we have to do it." He said, "Tom, no, I've done it 2 projects. I can never do this again." So I was okay. And I'm a helicopter pilot and fixed wing pilot myself. I have a commercial helicopter license, so I was like, okay. So I took a helicopter from the 34th Street heliport, and I flew up around the East River, and they've got this amazing bridge in the East River, and it's got this amazing structure on top looking straight down into downtown New York, and financial district. So I took some shots of it from my iPhone, and we flew around it for 10 minutes, and then I showed Chris that night. I said, "Chris, look at this. Imagine if he was up here." And we were working on that bridge in one of the last days of the movie, on Dark Knight Rises. And he was like, "Are you really serious?" I said, "Look, if you never use it, let me do it." So he did. The last shot of the film, up on the bridge, up on top. I sent the stuntman and the riggers up there, and a kid called Bobby Hanton in the suit. They climbed up there. So right on last light, the helicopter came and shot them and did things. And I think that was the best one of all 3. So that's something I know I personally contributed iconically, with the blessing and the creativity of the director I was working with. And, everyone always remembers those shots. So,
Oh yeah, I mean,
amazing.
but the greats, the greats. This is one of the funny things about the great directors is they'll take good ideas,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it might take a little bit of time. You know what I mean? Like it might have to sink in. I'll share a little thing that happened with me. Well, 2 things that happened with me. I was working with Walter Hill, who is one of the all-time greats, right? An amazing screenwriter, wrote Alien, just created Deadwood. And I did an audition for him that was like a 3-page monologue about me growing up in Southie in Boston, the character. And it was a terrific piece of writing, like absolutely great. And I was on set with him. I got the job and I was on set with him. And I said, Walter, I said, whatever happened to that monologue? And he goes, well, I don't know. And I said, well, it was just so good. Right? It was just so good. I love doing it. I mean, it got me the job, right? Because as you know, when it comes to actors, the material really matters, right? If it's really great material that you can get your teeth into. And anyway, I go home. I don't think anything of it. And I think it was like I got up the next morning, or maybe it was that night. But I get a call in the middle of the night, and I pick it up, and it's Walter, and he goes, "Do you still remember that monologue?" And I went, "Yeah." Because actually you learn it. I learned it. I didn't go in holding the sides, right? And he goes, "All right, we're gonna try and get it tomorrow." And I was like, "Okay." So we go in, and he's like, "Okay, we're just gonna try and do it in one shot, right? Let's just try and get it." And so they get the Steadicam in, and you know what it's like. Like you're running against the clock, right? You can't be taking multiple takes, else you lose it. You got to get that shot. And so they go, "Okay, right. Well, let's just give it a go, right?" And they come in with a Steadicam and they go, "Okay, and action." And I start the monologue, blah, 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 blah. Do not mess it up, right? I get all the way through and I finish it. And they go, "Cut." And the whole set goes, bah! Because it's that moment where everyone came together. They knew that the writing was good. I nailed it. The DP nailed it. It was the right decision from the director. And it was just a moment that everything comes together and it's a rush, right? But if he was more of an ego, he would have said, "No, I don't want to do that. Like, why would I do that? We decided not to do it. That's it." And I think you're saying the same with Chris as well. Like they're not, and they're both geniuses, right? They're absolute geniuses, but there's also a humility in the sense that they'll say, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'll take it. That's a good shot. I'll take it." And they are like
Yeah,
the shot with it. And I want to ask you about this because the two things that I always think of, and it's really strange when you were talking about that, was those aerial shots and the truck. I mean,
yeah,
that truck. I remember watching that because I think he shot it in IMAX, right?
yep.
That was
All
shot in
IMAX.
IMAX.
Yeah,
And I remember going, as an actor, this is one of the curses, right, of being in the industry. You break down those scenes in your head, like, how did they do that? I can't believe that they did that. How many cameras were on that shot, right? And you're running through all these things in your head while you're watching it happen, and also going, that is just unbelievable. And if you can take me through that. And then the other one is Inception, of course. I mean, Inception, I looked at that and I was like, that wire work is just, I've never seen anything like that in my life. But let's talk about that shot and how you came up with it.
well, with the truck, that was, sometimes it becomes a little bit of a political football with the for real action and financial gain and not, and going with the visual effects or SFX and stuff. But that was one I felt I really could do. And look, I make no bones about it. Chris Nolan is fantastic to work with for me. He does give me a big, let's say a big stick, so to speak. If I really, really push hard on something, he will rely on my experience and my creative input to for the action to give him what he wants. So that was one I pushed because originally they were like, "Nah, we don't want to do this for real. We'll do it with wires or we'll do it with visual effects or, other departments were wiring." And I was like, "Chris, just trust me on this. I can I can produce this truck wreck." And how we discussed. So anyway, so I got with special effects. They Andy Smith and his team, and they were great. And they got a boss, Chris Corbold. They all thought about their ways of doing it, and then I spoke to them about doing it. So they came up with the size of cannon, etc., in the trailer. So what we did is we did a rehearsal. It worked really well. The truck was we proved that it could go straight over, not fall sideways, stuff like that, because of danger to crew and buildings. Because where they wanted to shoot it was on the financial district part of Chicago. I believe it's financial district, Old Banks and that, but it's LaSalle Street, and it's a 4-lane street, so it's not, you know, 200
Narrow.
feet wide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get in there now. The driver of that truck is an old boy called Jim Wilkie, and he's got an amazing story himself. He started films back in the 70s, and he got home from the Vietnam War, and he was a bush kid that decided he wanted to be in the film business, and he started a little bit like me. He started on John Ford Westerns wrangling, so
Hmm.
we had a similar start, but amazing driver for this old boy. I mean, even today, I think he's like mid 70s, but you put him in a truck, there's still no one, even in the younger generation out there, you get him in the driver's seat, they can't touch him. It's amazing. Anyway,
Really?
so he drove it, and we did it. We did a rehearsal, which was in the chocolate factory, old chocolate factory, that we used. We rebuilt as a hospital, and they actually blew up for real.
Hmm.
Heath, with the school bus leaving, Heath walking away and stuff like that. And they said, okay, we did a rehearsal. It worked. To be honest with you, it went amazing. The truck traveled 28 mile per hour, and at a given point, Jim fired the nitrogen cannon in the back of the trailer, because the truck and trailer then were tied together to prime move in the trailer unit, tractor and trailer unit, and it went end for end. It worked really well. In fact, it worked so well, all we need to do is replace the trailer, and we use the same tractor unit in the real one, and on film. So we on that shot, and in the shot you'll see, and Chris was like, he put 3 cameras out, 4 cameras out, and one of the cameras, I said to him, let's put it in the front of this Crown Vic police car. So the police car is driving directly towards, and at the given point, he'll hit the button, flip, and it'll land bang in front of the police car. And so that's what we did. I drove the police car towards Jim. Jim drove 28 miles an hour, hit the button, and we both stopped safely with it crashing down in front.
That is
And
ridiculous. That is
and it was
ridiculous.
and it was a whole team effort. And the
I
special
mean,
effects
it's
team.
it's so
Thank you.
iconic now. I mean, that is
Yeah,
so iconic, and you look at how everything melds together, like you say, on in the creative process, in making something great, and Chris saying to you, okay, go do it, right? Because there's so many things that go into that. That's having the balls to give some, well, first is having the balls to do that stunt, because that is insane, right? And then it's having the balls to actually say, okay, I'm going to let that person do that stunt, and I'm going to put my, not only just reputation, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that can go wrong in those situations.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, and it's the little things, Matthew, that will catch you out. In the bigger stunts, in the bigger scheme of things, I believe that the amount of like preparation and rehearsal that goes into them, it brings that incident
down. Yeah.
so much. Yeah, so much. It brings it so minimal. Where it's the small silly things that will catch you out, or somebody. I've seen a few people hurt in my career, and and it happens because if you're doing this long enough and you're at a level where you're proficient as a professional, sooner or later it's like riding bulls, and rodeo. It'll catch you out. It's just got to. The odds are there. It's like being in the military. You get deployed in 10 deployments. Sooner or later the numbers catch up with you.
Yeah.
The possibility. It's those kind of analogies, but like going again, another Chris film, Dunkirk. I was convinced that one of the ways we could have our actors in the cockpit of what looked like a Spitfire, a real aeroplane, and we bring the real Spits up beside them, and then they could fold off together. So I convinced Chris and the DOP Hoyter that we could do this. So Chris was like, "You've picked an aeroplane." I was like, "Yes." Where can I find one? I said, "There's one in Denton, Texas." And I was in Los Angeles. He said, "Go get a check from Warner's and go and buy it. We're going to make a camera plane where we can put the IMAX camera on the outside and on the inside and have a pilot fly from the second seat, and the actors can be up front, convert it to look like a Mark 1 Spitfire, and get all those aerial shots." So we're literally in the air for real, not on a green screen or a digital volume. We're there doing it. And, Chris was so pleased that I pushed for that. And that's one of the things that I was very proud of as doing that. And Chris did also say that in the I don't really do a lot of interviews, Matthew, at all. There's very few out there of mine. And I don't think I even did one for Dunkirk. But in the behind the scenes, he gave me credit for it. And it was obviously there's a lot of pushing, and his DOP is incredible, Hoyter. And Hoyter was like, "I think it's going to be amazing." That was him. He's so positive. He's like, "It's going to be amazing. Let him put the camera on the outside of an airplane, look like a Spitfire, and we'll paint it, and it's not a real Spitfire, but we'll make it look like, so we can have a camera ship, and and we have a real Spitfires there, and we can film our cast." So I love those moments.
Well, that is just so iconic. I mean, I love that movie. I watched it actually. I hadn't seen it for some time. I mean, another mutual friend of ours worked on that, and I hadn't watched it, and then I don't know why, because I love Chris's work. I think I watch anything that he does. Although I believe it or not, I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but that creative push and that willingness to do right, that you have to be there's enough people that, as right, because you come up against it, there's enough people that would just get on set and they'll be like, "Okay, I'll do what you say," right? They're not necessarily pushing for excellence or pushing to do something that is memorable, and I don't mean new for the sake of it, right? But you're a creative within that, and I mean not just as a second unit director, but creative within the stunt process. So can you tell me a little bit about the process on Inception? Because that to me was, I remember watching that and going, before I knew you, I was like, I don't know how they did this. Like, this is just staggering amount of work, like just brilliant. If you're a technician in the industry, right, you look at that and you're like, that's a virtuoso performance right there.
Yeah. Inception was an amazing film for me. That was my first, as overall in charge with Chris. That was my first one. I'd worked with him with the other films, but I wasn't the overall boss at all, or worked before. But that was to give a backstory, to be listening to Chris and to read that script. I think at one point there was only like 3 scripts, maybe 4 scripts in the world. Wally, the first AD, the designer, Nathan, and myself had one. I think I was the first person to be allowed to take one outside the United States under lock and key. Chris is so secretive about these things, and I know the reason, and that's probably why, one of the reasons I don't usually give interviews, but also I don't normally talk about a project I'm working on, but I'm not working on any now, so I'm looking for one. But in that process, so there was Nathan and Wally and myself and Chris. We did all these director scouts together. It's unusual for a stunt coordinator to be on them, but Chris trusts very much. Like, it was like, just wait there for a little while, let me go and have a look, for example, at this building, or creatively let me think about it, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then you let me know what you think, if we can achieve that. So we'll do that, and that's how the process will go. And then when it came to the sequence of the 0G, Chris Cobalt special effects was amazing. They built this 100-foot long life-sized corridor that was revolving. And when it came to the fight, I knew that I had to get something a little different, because we did the corridor piece, but where I wanted to take it to the next level wasn't achievable in the corridor. So I went to production. I said, look, I'd love to have like 180 feet tall corridor that's in the vertical situation, where I can put people on wires and I can manipulate them and get them floating in that space without moving, so they have to fight the space, if you know what I mean. And out of all of that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, our cast member, was the key. It took me 9 weeks of rehearsals and figuring things out, how to get the action right for his fight in the combination with the special effects of their revolving tunnel and bedroom, etc., for the meat of the fight in what I had this tunnel built. And then originally the producer actually was like, no, we don't have the money for that. And I said, well, let's take part of my budget and let's build it, and then if it works, then we're all happy. And he said, well, check with Chris. So I said to Chris my ideas, and Chris was like, okay, let him do it. Give him the time. So I did all this, and then, when I do stuff for Chris, I only ever just video it from an outside point of view. I don't cut it together. I don't do any of that, because Chris likes to see it in the rawness and make his own decision about where he wants to have cameras and stuff like that. So previews don't exist. I just shoot it, just straight on, just let him see what's happening. So I did that from the top and from the bottom, and he really liked where we were going with it. We still had a long way to go. So then he managed to talk to Joseph, and they freed up 3 weeks for Joseph Gordon-Levitt to train every day with the performers that are being cast in the roles of getting killed and fighting, and Rick English and another couple of guys, and then after 3 weeks he was like, how do you feel? Because all of that hinged on one person's performance to tell that whole sequence, which was Joseph, and he was ready. So he shot that whole sequence. Chris shot that whole sequence in 2.5 days.
Wow.
And it's very hard. I mean, I like, for example, Tom Cruise does do his own. He gets someone to get it ready and to a level that's acceptable to him, and he does do his own stunts. And I got to say, it's very hard in our industry these days to get insurance and underwriters and everyone to sign off on giving people the opportunity to do more. And some people are capable, Matthew. Some people are not built to. I mean, I know some cast members are like, if it's more than a walk or run up the stairs, I've got a double for that. Or no, I want to do it. And Joseph, he just physically was there, and he rehearsed it. He did every single shot in that sequence, in the corridor, revolving corridor and bedroom, and then the vertical one that we had built for all the close contact wire work. He did the whole lot. And
that's amazing. I mean, I love him, actually. I think he's terrific. He's one of those guys where you're like,
I think he's so underrated. I think he's an amazing character, and I think he's an amazing person, really, in all my experience with him. He was very much job on, professional, wanting to create the best thing he could do.
Yeah, he's very, very good technically as well. I don't think, like you say, I don't think people really give him the credit for, for being as good as he is. I mean, he's a very, very good technical technically gifted actor, as well as, you know, I mean, he delivers the performances. But if you watch it and if you have an eye, you know, he's very, very precise with
Oh,
what he
so
does.
precise.
Yeah,
And that's what,
he's
you know, he sold it. You know, he sold that whole performance. And look, you know, with all the, we did a lot of wire work in that, and with all the manipulation that we do and putting them in, and all it does is, I was creating environment for him to be in, for him then to give his performance. And I think for stunt performers, a lot of them, they forget it's about performance sometimes when they're doing stunts. And
yeah.
I, you know, if I can be critical at all of wire work in action movies, I think sometimes stunt performers forget about, especially doing wire work, is forget about what the wire can do. It's about your performance when you're in the space that it is providing you to be in. And he took advantage of it. I mean, he's actually a very talented also musician. So he's very technically, always wants to be precise. You're right there, and he sold it by being that precise. He's a
Yeah, you know,
master at what he does.
it's funny because, you know, my wife was a ballerina, and a couple of my daughters are too as well. They're learning, and when you look at ballet, the whole point of ballet is once you get strong enough, once you get technically gifted enough to do it, is
Yeah,
to make it look easy, right? To make it look like it's a performance, like they're smiling, even though, you know, they're up on point and they're like, you know, every sinew of their body's like, oh, this is really difficult. Even when
yeah,
it's easier for them, it's difficult. And I think that you see it with performances sometimes, right? It's the
yeah,
same in it, with stunts. You know, if you've got someone that's like, you know, or they're not aware of where the camera is. I mean, it's a real art to get
yeah,
that. You know, I tell you this, Tom. So I did a film with Michael J. White, and as you know, like, he's the real deal. Like, I mean, that dude is a proper martial artist. He's a brilliant fighter.
yeah,
And you know, I'm like, you know, I have a black belt in Taekwondo, but I'm not that level. Like, I mean, he's other level. And
yeah,
I I flew in. I can't remember where we were shooting now. I think it was Vancouver. I flew into Vancouver, and the first day I got in, they were like, "Michael wants you to come down to the dojo or dojang." You're saying Taekwondo, right? Dojo. And so
yeah,
I go down there. And I'm like, okay, all right. And I go down. And he goes, okay, we're going to run through the you know, one of the first fights. We've got it all blocked out. I'm like, all right. And it was funny because it was this guy, bless him. He just opened this place, right? It was brand new. And I looked across, and there was a little crack in the drywall, right? Like, I remember looking at it and going, hmm. So anyway, we carried on and we started doing the choreography, and he was like, okay, this is what you got to do. It's going to be like 1, 2, duck under, move, kick with the right leg, you know, and I'm used to that, right? Like, I've
yeah,
done that a lot. Like, it's not like I'm an actor that hasn't done it. And so he goes, okay. And I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3, because, you know, when you, obviously, as you ramp up, right, Tom, you're getting faster and faster, and you want it to look real, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
But not too fast, right? You tell people, like, you don't want to do it too fast because the camera misses a lot of it. I mean, there's a real art to that. So
yeah,
anyway, I kind of go 1, 2, blah, 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 and Michael goes, all right, guys, see you later, I'm off. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I've only just done the one thing, right? I've done one thing. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, I've worked with people that don't know how to throw a punch. Clearly, you know what you're doing. I know that you're not going to hurt me, or you're not going to injure
yeah,
me, right?
yeah,
Because as you know, like, with those guys, like, I knew when I was working with Michael J. White, there was no way he was ever going to injure me because he was so good. You know, he can pull a punch like this fight. Not that it ever has to be that way, right? I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm talking to a master of this. You know, you can be way, way, way away from people when you, depending on the camera position on the punches. But he, you know, he'd been in a situation where, number one, I'm sure someone thought they knew what they were doing, and they hit him or her or somebody, and also it just doesn't look good, right? It just
no,
doesn't look good. So he was bugging on out, and the funny thing was, I did this part where the guy comes along and he grabs me, and I push him back, and we go right into the drywall, and
yeah,
we put a dent in the drywall, and it caves in because it wasn't on. You know, the studs weren't every like 12 inches. I don't know what it was. And I went, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. And he went, See that one there? We've replaced 2 of those there because, you know, we've gone into it with the other actors and we smashed it up a bit. But Michael was, and the funny thing about that was when we actually went to do the scene, and this is just a little thing for the people that are watching. I said to the costume, the wardrobe department, I went, listen, you need to give me some flexibility in my groin area because I've got a kick. And if I do not have like something that can stretch there, I'm going to rip my pants. Like, it's going to happen. Sure enough, dude, first time I come in, I hold like, I go wallop like that. And I kick, my pants rip all the way up. So I go out and I'm like, oh. So that because of the timing of the stunts, I had to have my double come in, who was amazing. I mean, he made me look like absolutely incredible. But he came in and he started doing the stuff. And I go downstairs and I'm sitting there waiting for them to repair my pants so I can go back up. And I'm sitting and waiting. And, you know, I mean, you can do a stunt and then they'll take an hour, 2 hours to reset, to get it right or move things. And, you know, It can take a long time. So I was just sitting there and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll wait. And then Michael came down and went, we're done. And I went, what? And he went, oh, I am so sorry. I didn't think that you wanted to do the scene. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I get to be on screen with Michael J. White fighting. Like, of course I want to do it. And he was like, I am so sorry. I was like, dude, no, it's fine. Because, you know, these things happen, right? There can be a little bit of a miscommunication or whatever. But let me ask you this, Tom, because I don't want to take any more of your time. We've been on for quite a bit. What is the thing that you are most proud of that you have done in your career? I mean, I know that's a difficult one to get, but there has to be something where you go, I mean, even if it was before you were a coordinator, or what was the thing that you look back on and you go, yeah, I did that?
Oh, I have been asked that question before. It is so hard to put a finger on it because honestly, like I say, I've been so fortunate to be part of so many iconic or what became iconic projects. One project that comes to mind, I don't think the rest of the world received it probably as good as like your Titanics or your Bravehearts or your Private Ryans, but I did think of Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio, where I wasn't the overall boss. I was second in charge. I was a stunt supervisor. Paul Jennings was my boss. It was amazing. I was back in Africa. My godfather was a military advisor who'd fought in 3 conflicts there, and a lot of the team that we had I knew from my time in Zimbabwe, and it was amazing. And we had amazing locations. Kevin Delanoy was the producer. You know, Susan Tanner was the UPM. These are people who and we were in South Africa and Mozambique making this movie. I mean, it was so surreal and amazing to do. Like, I remember the art department made this bar on the beach in Mozambique. It was so real, and this is without a word of a lie. We were walking back to our hotel on Friday night after shooting downtown. There was people lining up outside. They thought it was a real pub, and it was on the beach, you know. And that was just, and it's amazing. I mean, obviously, I'm in North Africa right now. I'm in Morocco right now. My wife's from here. Sorry, and Africa's got deep roots here, and it's just amazing place to come back, and it has all the levels of everything you want to do. And then the other, one of the other amazing things is it's a little bit of a sidetrack. I've done a couple of films in Bollywood, and in fact, I've actually won 2 statues for action directing in Bollywood. And it's called the Filmfare Awards, which are, I think, are exactly the same age as our Oscars. Mm-hmm. So I've been recognized in Southeast Asia for action directing, and there's no such thing for us here. So maybe
it's
one
crazy,
day,
isn't it? Isn't it crazy though that they don't have an Oscar for stunts?
Yeah, it is crazy. But you know what? Me personally, I think with my career and experience and the knowledge of the people I know and around us, maybe one day I'll get to direct a main unit, and like Chad and Brad and Dave and people like that, and because I think it's the people you have that surround you that makes a good project. Yeah. I mean, I think we all we all can, we've done Hard Knocks or whatever, but I think it's even in the acting and any part of our business, it's all about the people you have around you. And if you have good, honest people around you, then I think that's half the battle and road to success.
Well, I'll tell you this, I am so excited to see you direct. Like, I'm so
I'd love
excited to
to.
see you
Yeah.
get a hold of, because, in our conversations, it's just, you get to meet people that have real talent, right? And I don't just mean that like, because you can look you look at actors that sometimes they go and direct and they're terrible. Like, it's just, there's not a transferable skill for them in that environment. Then there are some of them like Clint, like Mel, that are just unbelievable. And same with the stunt community. I think that there are certain individuals that, because you can look at the John Wick series and just go, oh, the stunts. But the story is what really resonated with people. People love the stunts, and they're like, okay, it's great. I know Taron, who, I've done his course with the guns, and obviously Keanu is. I know multiple people that have worked with him. I mean, Chad had worked with him on The Matrix, and he was working with us on Rambo. And he had nothing but great things to say about Keanu. And I think that he's probably one of the most unifying characters in Hollywood, because everybody likes him. But you get to the point where you're like, okay, Chad clearly understands story. Those guys understand story, because you couldn't just go in there. And that's the same with you. And I mean, and it's exciting to me to think of your next evolution in your career, going from you are a legend. I mean, you are.
No, thank you.
You are. But to see where that is going to go on the next level is super exciting for me.
Oh, thank you. And I always remember it was my second time working for Simon Crane, a thing called Young Indiana Jones series. That's where I first started with him. And he said to me, you might be one of the great stuntmen. You might be a good stuntman. He said, I can't tell right now. I don't know. He said, but unless you learn what's happening on the other side of the camera and understand what we're looking at and what's expected, you'll never be any good. And I took that to heart, so it's that's where coming to learn what our business is about, learning what visual effects is, learning what camera is, what the formats are, what they're seeing gives us a better, and I think that was the best words of wisdom that I could have ever been given by anyone, was Simon Crane saying, learn what's on the other side of the camera and what we're doing. And here we are.
Well, you did that. You've been on set with the greats, right? So you sit and it's something that I did all the time. When on the movies that I've done, where everyone else goes, I'm going off to my trailer. I'll go and I'll sit in Video Village, like next to the director, because that that is a very special place, right? Like, it's like the inner sanctum, and you get to see the way that people look, the way that people cope with things, and I think that the bigger the things get, like the bigger the directors get, the more, for the most part, I mean, it's not always like that, but the more calm they are. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, that's what I've seen, and there's no ego, unless someone needs to be put in line and understand where they are, because they have an ego and they're like, flexing their muscles around the big ones. But like I said, I mean, those guys, they're too busy in their heads figuring out what they're going to do. And I was asked a ton of questions, right? When you can, like, you don't want to be sitting there in the middle of something that's really important and go, hey, what lens is that? They're like, why are you asking me this?
And like you say, it's amazing to watch the process of some of the greats I've worked with. Like I Spielberg on Private Ryan, and then seeing him, working with him on Munich. Chris, and then Denny. It's when you see how they bring their cast together. Obviously, all the technical people around that, they've got the best they can get, because they're at a level where they can employ the best in the business. So they have the best cameramen, they have the best effects and everyone. And then they take their cast and then they rely on their performances. And honestly, I see very little other than giving them the environment and the space. Someone like Chris, you don't see, they have their discussions with their cast, etc., but you don't hear him yelling out, "Oh, start crying, start doing this, start doing that." That's not what that they don't have to, because in their minds they're watching the performance, and they might have a quiet word and say, well, what about if we did this, and we adjusted and we came in on the line on there, and they use their camera work to help tell the story too. So it's a whole combination. And I find that process, like you've just touched on, amazing, from the people who are really great and what we consider in our day and age now to be amazing directors and amazing technical people and DOPs and that. It's good to see them apply their craft. And I'm very much like you in that respect. I love to listen and see what they do. And if I don't know, I'll ask that question. Sometimes it's probably not the smartest thing to do is ask these questions, because sometimes you're expected to know, but how can you know if you don't ask? That's also in my agenda,
Well, I think that if you're humble, I think people respect that. Like I always tell people, like, you don't have to bullshit, right? You can just say, I don't know. I need to learn that. Like, and that's an admirable. I think that's an admirable quality in someone, that I can go, hey Tom, listen, what do you think about this? Like, I've been thinking this, but what do you think about that? And I don't know this, and how can I learn that? I think it's very, very important. And I mean, it's done you all right, hasn't it?
It's done well. Look, honestly, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, because I can be outspoken. I got to be careful, because you got to think. Sometimes you get very tunnel vision. Like, I've got to make it happen. I've got to get the best I can. Where sometimes you've got to broaden that and take a step back and let other things happen, so that then you can do your job too. I think that comes with age. I think that's with anything. I think with age comes responsibility and knowledge. So hopefully we all learn by it. And I think
wisdom,
right?
And you get wisdom with it.
I'm a great lover of history, and the history of all kinds. Doesn't matter whether it's film or war or whatever it might be. And I think that if we look at our history and learn by it, and then we can take that little bit of wisdom we have and apply it to our trade. So that's what I try to do a lot,
Well, Tom, I am so grateful that you took the time to talk to me. I mean, you're a good friend. I'm very grateful for your friendship. And I'm very grateful that you came on and spent the time with me on here. And I know that a lot of people out there are going to really, really appreciate your wisdom and your guidance. And hopefully we can spawn more filmmakers in the old, I hate to say in the old kind of like mold, in the old mold, but just great filmmakers,
Yeah, and I think great filmmakers, any great filmmaker, I see, and even you go all the way back through history, all your great technicians and your filmmakers and that, all very creative people, all work very hard. They don't rely thinking that, like our kids' society now, a lot of it is, oh, I should have that. Well, no, you got to earn, and I think that we run the risk of being spoiled. And I think we're guilty of it a little bit, especially for our own children, because, where I grew up, it was I grew up in the middle of Australia. It's quite harsh outback, chasing cows and riding horses and all that kind of stuff. And like it was done back in the States in the 30s, like in the 80s and 90s in Australia. And I think it stood me well. Like my dad said to me once, how do you know to work if you're not taught how to work?
Yeah.
And I always remember that. So, and he said, if you're not taught how to work, if I don't make you get up at 6 a.m. and go out and fix fences and windmills and chase cows and then go to school, he said, how are you going to know in future life? At the time I was thinking, this is not the best time, not what I want to be doing, And as kids, that's what we did. But that's the kind of environment I grew up in. So I think it's really done me a lot of good. It's not for everybody, but I think it really helped, and it taught me a set of morals and principles, and always do the best I can with the tools I have and the job I have,
Well, firstly, God bless good dads, right? And I had a friend of mine around here the other day, and he turned around to my 17-year-old and he said, "You know what, son?" He goes, "The older you get, the smarter your dad becomes." Yeah, and I was like, because it's true, right? You get older and you're like, at that moment, you don't want to hear it. Why am I getting up? Why am I doing this? I mean, now it's like, why am I cleaning my room? Right. I mean, that's how far we've come. And it's like, look, and I literally had a chat with my son last night. I said, son, you might not like a lot of the stuff that I'm saying, And the interesting thing for me is, I've got like adult children and I've got a 1-year-old, and I said, but when I look at you, you're still like that 1-year-old to me, like, right? You're still, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I've lived a lot of life, and I love you, right, as a dad. But that doesn't mean enabling you in any kind of dysfunction or enabling you to go down the wrong path. And it's difficult sometimes. It's a lonely life being a father, because you have to be okay with being disliked by your kids, right? Because you're not meant to be their friend, you're meant to be their dad, and that is putting those boundaries. And again, like I said, the older you get, the smarter your dad becomes, right? Because you're like, no, he set me up for life. I didn't like it at the time, but he set me up for life.
Exactly. And I can see I'm very much in parallel with you. I've got a 25 and a 23 and a 3-year-old. So there's 20 years and 1 week between my last two. And it's a different ball game again, and I thought I was past that, over the age of the hill of wanting to do that also. But it's amazing. And, my first 2 children were amazing. And then, touch wood, they've turned into amazing young adults. And I hope that I can do a really good job with this latest edition, because he's an amazing little fellow. And like you say, sometimes it is the loneliest place on the planet to be. And I think when you reach, wherever you reach in life, if you reach your goals and you achieve that, especially in our business, going back to the film business, it is a very lonely position when you become the head of department or directing or whatever, because there's 500 other people below would like to do the same job.
Yeah. And they think they can as well, by the way. They think they can.
Yeah.
They're like, what, why is he doing that? Like,
And they do. And, not everyone has an opinion, and it's a very healthy thing. So, and not every opinion is acceptable, and not every way is the right way or the wrong way. So, and I always remember now, none of us are infallible, and there's always someone out there that will do the job. Maybe you won't see it as good as you won't see them doing as good as you are, or maybe they'll do it better. But there's always someone who can do it. That's like they always say, there's a bigger kid on the block, and I think it has relevance too with what we do.
Well, Tom, I've loved this conversation, as I always do our conversations.
It came out the blue this morning this afternoon for me, but it was coming out the blue. But it's always an absolute pleasure, and I love it. And let's talk again soon. I like that.
Right on. Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, Matthew.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, mate. Bye.